Welcome back to the next discussion during our AI and customer experience masterclass done by Next. And we are continuing approaching a very interesting theme, which is AI next on the roadmap of digital transformation? What to say? I mean, first of all, as already many times said, we sit on huge amount of data, and now we actually should extract this data in the proper way to deliver customer experience, and for that we definitely and certainly need AI and machine learning. In this panel today, we have three extraordinary panelists. So first of all, really pleased to welcome Haider Alleg from Ferring. Haider, how's it going in Switzerland?
All right, it's sunny, as you can see. I have some sunlight, which is, I'm not complaining. Thanks for asking.
Thanks a lot. Then we have from United States, Nikos Georgiades, who is the former Senior Vice President from Novartis. Nikos, how are you?
Very well, thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
You're always very welcome, Nikos. And hopefully we also have Rorik, who most probably will also join us as well. So let's deep dive into the conversation. And my first question for you today is, did COVID create the perfect playground for AI as the next big thing when it comes to the transformation process? Nikos, let's start with you, please.
Yeah, thanks, Dario. Look, COVID, I think, has been certainly a catalyst, but the trend was ongoing and the technology has been developing independent of COVID, as you can imagine. Perhaps what the pandemic has given us the opportunity is to test many of the ideas and try to accelerate them and put them into practice more by necessity rather than by normal course of the business. The only thing I will point out, however, is that these trials with new technologies and digital engagement and other channels were not necessarily an experiment that individual companies have been doing, but it was a forced reality that everyone was put into the leveling ground field. So I think there's a lot to be learned for sure, but as we go back to normal, what sticks and what goes back to different kinds of technology, what we're looking for in the future may be different than what we experienced certainly in the last 18 months or so.
Thank you very much. Thanks a lot, Nikos. We see in the meantime Rorik also joins. Hi, Rorik, how are you?
Hey, Dario, all fine. How are you? Good to see you.
Fantastic. We already started the discussion, so let's stick with you. Same question. Did COVID create the perfect playground for AI as the next big thing inside this whole digital transformation process?
All right. Well, directly a challenging question to start with, Dario, but I would say not necessarily COVID. I would say almost the unprecedented push into digital really gave that perfect playground for AI. I think the more we do with digital, the more data we have. And for people like me that love data, I think this is like a perfect storm, and AI is a great tool to hopefully build on the data that we get from the more data that we have available, because we became much more digital over the last few months.
Thanks a lot, Rorik. So can we claim that we are finally digital savvy or still not?
I think, Dario, I mean, if you look at it, COVID has created the perfect storm to ask ourselves the right question when it comes to using AI as a tool and not just as a, let's say, a buzzy term on a slide, because we were stressed by time, lots of data to chew. I think of the commercial organization here, to see where should we focus our efforts, and a lot of automation to run, so that we have next best actions and like basically customer journeys that were well aligned. So I think it is a good at the end of the day, we became creative because of the stress we had due to COVID. It's not a reason to not continue to be kind of under stress, to ask ourselves the right question, to continue spoofing or adopting those emerging channels and tech for the greater good. Yeah.
Thanks a lot, Haider. And let's remain with you, because you really have plenty of experience from other industries besides pharma. And my next question leads me actually to customer experience. And what is actually AI capable to do in terms of improving the overall HCP journey and better customer experience outcomes? And what, for instance, you can say to our audience when you compare pharma and some other industries where, again, you really have a lot of experience?
If I continue maybe on this piece, when you look at social media marketing, for example, and you see that big brands are pretty much using it as an opportunity, they don't see it as a threat. And us in pharma, we usually kind of look at social media marketing like a Pandora box you can be scared of. If you look at some advancement in AI in the way that you do text recognitions and you can actually use it to triage better messaging so that you can really actually choose adverse events for the good reason we have to do adverse events, meaning identifying, where we can monitor what our drugs are doing on the market. And now we can do it at scale, and we can be smart about it and be supported by tools to cover a big territory. And on the other side, if you look at it from a marketing opportunity perspective, once you have a territory that is large to cover, you can use the same tools to start digging. Where do you find influencers? When do you find the right doctors that have voices, that have amplifications for your scientific messages and so on. So you see, so if you ask yourself the right question, then suddenly those tools are opening opportunities and reducing the risks of what we called before potentially threats to our organizations.
Thanks a lot, Haider. Nikos?
Yeah, I think from my perspective, the experience that our customers have has to be relevant and timely and value add to what they're trying to achieve as compared to traditional mass market type of marketing and commercialization approaches. With that said, I do want to go back to the technology a little bit in terms of, I think the technology is phenomenal, and I'm very excited about the capabilities and the potential of those technologies. But sometimes I think we get too excited about the technology and forget the problem we're trying to solve for. And I think we need to be very clear, how do we deploy AI or data or other technologies towards specific problems rather than the other way around. And I think if we do that, we will be putting the customer and the patient at the center of our thinking, and then finding solutions for them based on the technology. And I think that's what's going to increase the experience and the personalization that Haider and you have mentioned earlier.
And from experience, what's the biggest problem when we speak about AI? What is the $1 million problem to be solved?
If you think about it, what is a golden KPI is changing behaviors, and anything that you can put in the middle of an organization and an end target that will accelerate that change of behavior or facilitate the change of behavior towards you. Could it be HCPs, right, that will understand faster your message? Or could it be HCPs that will, take decisions in front of their patient easily because you created the condition for them to take that decision faster? Or could it be patients that will adhere more to their treatments because you created a condition for their behaviors to follow a certain path? I would say that is definitely putting pharma on the verge of becoming a service company, or if not creating those services itself, to be a catalyst for producing those non-drug services and bring them to the market.
Thank you, Haider. Rorik, same question for you.
No, I think Haider covered it very nicely. I just want to maybe go to that next level of indeed, what is it that we're solving for, right? If you just take this very practically, how can you leverage AI or maybe first machine learning and basic algorithms? It's all about better understanding what our HCPs need and by when. And if you just imagine you're targeting 500 HCPs, you could leverage data, you could assume where they are on the adoption ladder, you could assume what their needs are now and what they would need next. But if you really consider all these HCPs who you've already engaged with that went through that adoption ladder, how can you then leverage all the data that you have available? And I think that's really, especially at scale, where machine learning and AI will give us that much needed speed to get faster to actionable insights. And actionable insights are for field force, right? That's the a use case that we hear and see very often, but equally important also for the teams that sit in our offices and engage with that same audience, with that same set of HCP. So I think, yeah, it's like Haider said, it's solving for that better customer experience, for making sure that we add that value. And let's face it, we'll have to adopt this at scale, because being non-relevant or little to no value adding in our engagement is something that HCPs will tolerate less and less from us.
Definitely. However, I have this strange impression that we maybe have the wrong expectations from AI, right? So my question to you is actually what AI can and what AI can't, because based on the insights which you have from many pharma meetings, board meetings, and so on. So what is AI actually capable to do, and what actually AI can't solve or can't do? And we strongly believe he can actually. Rorik, let's remain with you.
I'd almost like to flip the question a bit, Dario, because for me, it's all about what is the use case? What is it that we're solving for, instead of saying, hey, what can we do with AI? And I think understanding that, so what is it that you're solving for? How is it that you can bring this measurable value in the organization, but also hopefully for your external engagement, for your HCPs and potentially other people that you engage with. I think it's identifying what you're solving for and the value that it will bring before you even consider AI. Because if you consider data, leveraging data, AI is on a certain scale on the maturity level. So for me, it's all about, let's do a step back. What's it that we're solving for? And is there indeed that use case for AI?
Thanks a lot. Nikos?
Yeah, I'm a little bit with Rorik on this in terms of you have to have the problem and the use case well specified. In terms of the limitations of AI, I think it's actually, we haven't even scratched the surface, and the technology will continue to advance in the capabilities, but the trick will be to codify the problem you're trying to solve and deploy the technology against that problem in a meaningful way that advances the organization's objectives. Otherwise, it will be just too fragmented and one-offs, and it won't really move the needle significantly. Like capability-wise, where we are today is just light years ahead from where we were 5 years ago. And 5 years from now, you can only imagine where the technology will be and what competitive advantages can create for those who know how to harness it. So I'm a strong believer on the technology for sure, but in the context of the business with well-specified problems we're trying to solve. Thanks
a lot. Haider?
I think there is one big elephant in the room is data, right? Because for me, AI is like killing a fly with a bazooka. Sometimes, we just want to put it because it's cool. And sometimes you just can, you can solve your problem with an advanced algorithm and just some advanced queries in the database, and that will just do the trick, right? Even that, you will find in the room no one to help you just decipher the insights from those queries. So when you come up with the big bazooka and you say, yeah, let's put some machine learning and advanced 3-level models, or some image recognition algorithm, sometimes it's just super heavy and we are not prepared as a company to do that. So I would say, first of all, do we have the data? Yes, most of us in our companies, we have silos of data that are just sitting there. Can we do a retrospective analysis and can we build business cases and hypotheses to go back to those data retrospectively? That is already a good question to ask to our colleagues, And second of all, if we want to do predictability, or if we want to do some proactive, management of the data that we will continue grasping, are we having the structure to collect that data, structure that data, analyze that data? So for me, it's way beyond just AI. It's actually connected about what my colleagues here are saying, but also do we have the fuel to put that into an ecosystem,
Nice.
I think that's a very good point you're making, and I think if we look at the volume and velocity with which data is accumulating, it's only going to increase, and with that there is a lot of noise in that data. So what you do with the data and how do you use artificial intelligence to generate actionable insights, I think those will be the tricks of the near future. The cutting through the clutter of the noise of all the data that exists and synthesizing them into insights that can be acted upon. I think those will be the big advancements in the next 2-3 years that we will see.
Thanks a lot, Nikos. Next question, and let's stay with you. How to manage culture and change management in AI implementation?
Yeah, I think that's, if I may start, Dario, this is probably the one area that when we work in these fields, we continuously underestimate. At the end of the day, we need to change the way we operate, the way that we work, and that involves humans and people who are used to in certain ways. So investing early and heavily on change management and adoption into the organization of these new techniques is probably as important, if not more important, than the technology itself.
Exactly.
Which exists and will continue to advance by itself, whether we do have the adoption or not.
Thanks a lot, Nikos. Haider?
I mean, in terms of change management, I sit in a commercial organization, and usually when they hear AI, it's about, it's the techie things that someone in IT will deliver. And I say, what if we have a AI-driven service that is a game changer for our clinical practice? Who will be the product manager that will lifecycle manage or launch that product to the market? And then, people change their vision. They say, oh, that's actually an interesting question. Are we having the right decision-making framework commercially to stabilize those type of services into our mix? And potentially we don't, right? And we don't even, from an HR perspective, we don't even have the talents right now. If you ask a company, how many data scientists do you have that are working on non-drug related products? The answer might be, not that much in our organizations. So I think it starts with the top, like usually, are we having the willingness to integrate those types of activities and those types of tech and emerging channels into our midst? Some companies out there, I think some pharma companies we can hear, they are creating a tech arm or data arm within their organization. Some are saying, let's stay and remain a good manufacturers of molecules, but let's be smart and connect with an ecosystem outside, so that we are using, the best of breed outside to bring us those the services to us. So I think Ferring, as I can talk about, is on that second piece where we want to be connected with an ecosystem of innovators. But it means that it starts with a willingness from the top to, take a leap of faith into those services. And then within understanding what it means, is coming back to what Rorik was saying, being very clear of what is the impact of those services or AI-driven products into our classical activities. I think it starts with that connection from strategy to a bit that operational piece, not so much the terrain, and not so much becoming an AI expert within a pharmaceutical company.
Thanks a lot, Haider. And Rorik?
Yeah, maybe I'll take it a bit to the next level. I would almost say, to a certain degree, technology in a lot of fields that we play is becoming technology is becoming a commodity. It's really our people using the technology that will make the difference, right? And that's the same with AI, with AI and all the different solutions that you might be able to find. But to go back to your initial question, Dario, how to manage cultural and change management. Maybe just 3 simple tips from my side to start with. Don't just consider AI because you heard us talking about it today. Go back to that use case. What is it that you're solving for, right? And make sure that if you have clarity on what you're solving for, that you make sure it's measurable and brings value to your organization, because that will go a very long way in your change management story and your journey. And my second tip would be around how will you be measuring and actually improving voice of the employee. So what does it bring to our internal stakeholders, voice of the business, not to forget, and ultimately, how will it improve voice of the customer experience that we offer. And last but not least, and I think also that's something that Haider alluded to before, is make sure that you have the basics in place, right? You can't just jump on AI if you're not even having a set of integrated capabilities up and running, or if your field force is not willing to work within an integrated customer engagement model. You need to have the basics in place first before you can start thinking about this next level of advancement. But if you have it in place, if you have that use case, then I truly believe that leveraging data, getting these actionable insights from machine learning, from simple algorithms, or ultimately artificial intelligence will go a very long way in the near future.
Thanks a lot, Rorik. Which comes to my next question, and this is actually, I really wonder, from the commercial side, of course, what is actually the role of AI? Is it to assist the rep? Is it to define the best next action, to deliver extraordinary customer experience, to fine-tune the digital journey? So what is actually the role of AI when we speak from a commercial perspective? Nikos?
Yeah, I think today and the pandemic as well as testing ground has shown us and proved again that the role of the rep today is still important and significant and will continue to be for the time being. The reason is that I think our people are able to develop relationships with our HCPs and staff that technology has not managed to do in an effective way. So for that reason alone, I think the role of the rep will continue to be very important, certainly in the near and mid future. With that said, technology can certainly augment the capabilities and the ability of these of our people to increase their influence and increase the effectiveness and efficiency of how they do things. Whether it's with simple things that are allowing them to connect remotely, just like we are doing right here, or whether it's generating for them insights, synthesize actionable insights that they can take to advance their business. Right now, a lot of the information that we have, and that amount of information is exploding, is dumped onto our people in very unfiltered dashboard-like representations. That's very inefficient, and we don't hire reps to be analysts of endless dashboards. So we do have a huge need to be able to synthesize that information for them in much better ways. So that would be certainly one way to help them. Technology will also play a huge role in generating better understanding of the individual physician and what makes them tick, whether it is through, again, data analytics, or whether it's through some of the newer technologies like sentiment analysis and real-time feedback on the interactions. Those are technologies that certainly exist today, but they haven't penetrated our industry in our mode of interaction. And I see that certainly in other fields, but I think they will come to pharmaceuticals as well. And then there's other use cases as well that we can talk about. But the role of the rep will continue to be important, I think, and it's how we augment that capability with technology to make it more efficient and effective.
Thank you, Nikos. Haider?
So if people know me, you know that I like cars, right? So I will give you a car analogy. If you are a driver, obviously the sales rep being the pilot here, you might argue that AI or tech in general might automate some of your travels. If you are commuting 10 minutes from your home and it's a straight line, the doctor knows, your key message by heart because your drug is 15 years old, you might not need a Formula One pilot. And you might need someone that is here if the car is stopping so that you still continue the journey, but you don't need a sales rep every time. And that is where tech can have a bit of a support. Now, some complicated stories, some complicated journeys, request you to have a Formula One driver. And this is where, yes, potentially compared to before, he's not having a manual gearbox and he's having an automated gearbox. He has advanced GPS, to know what is the next best turn to get to that particular objection in a slide. And he will have historical data to understand that usually he needs a little bit more, push to go through the hill or whatever. So that kind of, for me, is where you use in another context that sales rep or medical affairs salesperson. And in some, I guess, in some really new launches or some positioning, when you have that commercial excellence to display, then you are basically on a racetrack. And then AI here is about to making sure that you get as fast as possible to the right target, meaning, for example, coverage, advertising. You need to make the big bang, right? And this is where, in a very short of time, instead of setting your brand in 6 months to cover your call plan, you might use those tools to cover it in 3 months, and that will optimize your launch sequence. So you see, so I'm just using that analogy to say, we are not saying that the rep is disappearing. We are saying the role of the rep has changed. Even we can say marketing people are also changing their role, and we see now, at least in my company, some salespeople doing a bit of marketing now, using those tools. So it's interesting to observe.
That's a good point. Actually, when we say AI to the majority of people, they always think about robots and they will take just my job, right? Which I think not the case, right? So that's the myth about AI for sure. Rorik.
Yeah, I think it's a great analogy, Haider, and I'm just shamelessly gonna steal/build on the analogy that you just gave, right? You gave a perfect example about how we could indeed support the rep, right? But also think about the supporting team of the rep, our office-based teams, right? They will know what the rep needs to be successful to get that actual race done in a certain time. But also consider the voice of the business, right? From a business perspective, I will now know with the right amount of fuel to get me to that finish line. Meaning we're going to be much more specific on where we actually will leverage face-to-face engagement, or where we're going to complement with office-driven or rep-triggered digital tactics. So I think AI can help us to a certain degree predict indeed what needs to happen across that journey, or to go back to the analogy, to make sure that we do the race in the most efficient way. And the only part that we forget now is like the visitor of such a big Formula One event, and we can say that that's the customer. So hopefully with AI we will be able to better understand what our customers needs by when, and how to fit that into the analogy. We'll take that for the next session, but I think it will bring value to the stakeholders that we have internally, as well as those that we serve externally.
Thank you, Rorik. With that thought, thank you very much, gentlemen. Let's leave it for the next session, like Rorik said, and hopefully it will be live very soon, because we are doing a live event in May. Of course, we will announce everything in proper timing. So once more, thank you very much, Nikos, Haider, and Rorik, for joining this extraordinary session. Sure. We will publish it on our YouTube channel, and take very good care. Until next time.
Thank you.
Dario. Bye-bye.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.